600 dealerships that they will be closing their showrooms next month.
You're not safe from this. Not if you own a car, a loan, or a job. Across America, tow trucks are prowling like vultures. Repossessions are spiking. Even nurses, teachers, delivery drivers, no one's being spared. They're losing their cars, and you could be next. So why is this happening now? How did vehicles turn into debt traps? And what's the one decision that could save you from it all? Because if you wait, it might already be too late. What's happening? Across the United States, dealerships are facing something they were never built to survive: a total breakdown of demand. At this very moment, over $847 billion worth of unsold vehicles are sitting idle on dealership lots. That's not just an inconvenience, it's a financial death sentence. Most dealers operate on what's called floor plan financing, which means they borrow money from manufacturers or banks to keep cars on the lot. When those vehicles don't sell, the dealers still pay interest every single month. The more unsold cars they carry, the faster the debt piles up. A healthy dealership typically holds 60 days of inventory. 90 is a red flag. But now, the average dealership is sitting on over 340 days worth. That's not just unhealthy, it's fatal. Dealers across the country are reporting operating losses in the tens of thousands of dollars each month just from inventory financing alone. These aren't low-end cars either. One luxury dealer in Phoenix confessed that several vehicles, each worth close to six figures, have been sitting untouched for nearly a year. Some are still making payments on cars that have never even been test-driven. Yet while dealers are choking on inventory, a quieter disaster is unfolding in American households, one late payment at a time. Payment priorities collapse. They're skipping car payments, the one bill most people never walk away from. In a country where transportation is essential to daily life, missing a car payment has always been a worst-case scenario. For decades, auto payments ranked among the last bills Americans would dare to neglect, behind mortgages, credit cards, even utilities. But that hierarchy has been shattered. According to LendingTree, over 5% of American borrowers are currently delinquent on their auto loans. Nearly 2% are more than 30 days late, and just under 1% have missed over 90 days. Among subprime borrowers, the numbers are even worse, reaching levels higher than what we saw during the 2008 financial crisis. And yet, we're supposed to believe the economy is thriving. The stock market is at record highs. Unemployment is officially low, but none of that reflects the reality on the ground. Wages are flat, expenses are exploding, and for many households, there's simply not enough left over at the end of the month. The Federal Reserve reports that auto loan balances have now surpassed $1.6 trillion. Average monthly car payments have hit a record $750. When someone stops paying for their car, it's not because they forgot. It's because something had to give. They've likely already skipped a credit card bill or ignored an overdue electricity notice. They might even be staring down an eviction. The car payment is often the final line of financial defense, and that line is breaking. And when those payments stop, the consequences don't stay invisible for long. If you felt the pressure, missed a payment, delayed a purchase, or just noticed something's off, hit that like button so more people wake up to what's happening, and drop a comment. Are you seeing this in your city, your dealer, your family? The more we share, the harder this becomes to ignore. Repo Nation, first comes missed payments, then come bank repossessions, at levels not seen since 2009. Across suburban neighborhoods and apartment complexes, repo trucks are once again a common sight. According to Prodigal Tech, over 1.7 million vehicles were repossessed in the last calendar year, marking a 16% increase over the previous year. These aren't just junkers, they're late-model SUVs, family sedans, even electric vehicles, pulled from driveways and parking lots with zero warning. The repossession wave is now the visible face of an invisible financial collapse that's been building for months. Behind each of those repossessions is a story. A young father in Georgia had just started driving for a delivery app to make ends meet. His car was seized at night while his family slept. A nurse in Ohio, still paying down student loans, lost her vehicle the day before a 12-hour shift. The repo man didn't care. He had 5 more pickups scheduled that night. For the companies financing these loans, the vehicles are just numbers. For working people, they're lifelines. The repo crisis is not just a result of poor financial planning. It's a systemic failure. People bought cars during inflated pandemic pricing, locked into long-term loans with high interest rates, and then watched as their vehicles lost value faster than their debts shrank. And now, many of them are learning that even giving up the car won't be enough to erase the damage. Still, the most deceptive phase of the crash wasn't about repossessions. It was the sales spike that fooled everyone, the false boom before the crash. So dealers are stuck with too many cars, buyers are underwater, and repo trucks are rolling again. But here's the twist. Just a few months ago, everything looked fine. In fact, the industry saw a brief, deceptive boom. In the spring of this year, when President Trump announced sweeping new tariffs on foreign auto imports, American buyers rushed into showrooms. Many feared that prices would skyrocket as new duties kicked in. Manufacturers leaned into the panic, cutting incentives and promoting the idea that buying now meant beating the tariffs. Sales surged temporarily, reaching an annualized rate of over 17 million units. That spike vanished quickly. After the tariffs took effect, vehicle prices soared by thousands. Sales collapsed from June to August, leaving dealerships drowning in unsold inventory. Cars once seen as assets now became liabilities, bleeding cash instead of generating it. This false boom was perhaps the cruelest part of the entire collapse. It gave dealers hope, encouraged them to stock up on inventory, and left them exposed when the floor fell out. Now, they're sitting on mountains of cars no one wants, thanks to a demand curve that was manipulated by fear, not reality. But if you think the crash ends at the dealership door, think again. The next chapter of this disaster unfolds in the places hit hardest: America's small towns. Local extinction. Dealership doors are shutting, and with them, American jobs are vanishing by the thousands. In small towns across the country, the local car dealership was more than just a place to buy a vehicle. It was an institution. It sponsored Little League teams, supported 4th of July parades, and employed dozens, sometimes hundreds of people in communities that didn't have many other options. But now, those dealerships are closing down at an alarming rate. Chrysler has already notified nearly 800 showrooms that their contracts will not be renewed next month. General Motors is following close behind, warning over 1,000 dealers that they will be cut loose before the end of next year. These aren't temporary layoffs or seasonal slowdowns. These are permanent closures. Franchise agreements are being severed, facilities are being liquidated, and it's not just the sales floor that's going dark. Service bays, financing desks, and parts departments are being dismantled piece by piece. In some towns, these dealerships were the single largest employer. Their closure is a community-wide economic detonation. The most heartbreaking part? Many of these businesses are family-run operations that survived generation after generation. They made it through the Great Depression, World War II, and the 2008 financial crisis. But they could not survive 2025, and for every dealer shuttered, the fallout spreads far beyond the showroom floor. What follows dealership closures isn't silence. It's a strategic retreat from the very towns that depended on them most. The vanishing Middle America. Auto manufacturers are slashing dealer networks by nearly 40%, rewriting where cars get sold. This isn't just about closing struggling locations. It's about abandoning entire geographic regions. Major automakers have begun pulling out of suburban and rural markets completely, instead concentrating their sales strategies on large urban centers. The logic is ruthless: higher foot traffic, easier logistics, fewer underperforming franchisees. In the boardrooms, it makes sense. On the ground, it feels like betrayal. Communities already on the edge are watching as their last remaining connection to the auto industry disappears. A small-town dealer in Iowa, who had represented the same brand for over 40 years, received a termination letter with less than 90 days' notice. No negotiation, no assistance, just a corporate directive to wrap it up. He's now converting his lot into a tire shop, but most of his mechanics are gone, and the building sits mostly empty. The message from manufacturers is clear: if you don't live in a major metro, your business and your transportation needs are no longer a priority. But this shift is more than economic. It's political, it's personal. In states already feeling neglected by Washington and Wall Street, the collapse of dealerships feels like one more nail in the coffin of middle-class life. Meanwhile, in Washington, a political gamble triggered a temporary boom that's now unraveling in slow motion. The tariff trap. President Trump's 25% tariffs pushed demand early, but now they've unveiled the collapse. Back in the spring, when the tariffs on foreign-made vehicles were announced, they were framed as a patriotic boost to American manufacturing. Automakers scrambled to adjust supply chains. Dealers warned customers that prices would spike soon, and for a few frantic weeks, buyers rushed into showrooms to beat the tariff. Sales exploded. Inventory disappeared. It felt like a boom, but it wasn't. The demand was artificial. It had been pulled forward by fear. Once the tariffs hit, the cost of vehicles, especially those with foreign components, rose by thousands of dollars overnight. That increase was passed directly to the consumer. And suddenly, the frenzy turned to silence. The summer months revealed the truth. Buyers had already acted. the pipeline was dry. Now, instead of encouraging long-term growth, the tariff panic has contributed to the worst sales decline in over a decade. Brands that had ramped up production to meet spring demand are now sitting on excess inventory. Dealers who extended themselves to handle the flood are now drowning in loan obligations. And consumers, they're left with fewer options, higher prices, and more debt. Beyond policy, though, the real prison is personal, and it's locked behind a car payment. The payment prison. Consumers are trapped. Underwater loans, sky-high payments, and no escape in sight. For millions of Americans, their car is not just a tool, it's their second biggest financial commitment after housing. And right now, that commitment has turned into a prison. During the post-pandemic years, vehicle prices soared. Buyers took out longer and riskier loans, some stretching up to 84 months, to afford inflated prices. Now, as the market corrects, many of those vehicles are worth far less than what's still owed on them. This is negative equity, and it's spreading fast. If you bought a car in 2022 or 2023, chances are you're underwater. That means if you tried to sell your vehicle today, you'd still owe thousands more than its current value. Trade-ins have become nearly impossible. Leasing is out of reach, and refinancing, not an option when interest rates are hovering at the highest levels in over 2 decades. Buyers are stuck with payments they can't afford on assets that are depreciating faster than ever. And with insurance premiums rising and maintenance costs climbing, the total burden of car ownership has reached a breaking point. Many are now choosing to walk away, literally abandoning vehicles rather than continue throwing money into a losing equation. And this crisis of affordability is not just pushing consumers out of the market, it's driving dealers to make drastic decisions to survive. Fire sale survival. Some dealers are cutting prices so deep it defies belief, just to keep the lights on. Across the country, desperation is rewriting the rules of pricing. In August alone, dealerships in Arizona, Florida, and Ohio have slashed sticker prices by as much as $30,000 just to move unsold units. Luxury sedans once marked at $70,000 are now being offered in the low 40s. Pickup trucks that sat idle for months are being bundled with year-long service plans, zero-interest financing, and even gas cards just to get buyers through the door. One dealer in Nevada, who asked not to be named, said his lot sold only 16 vehicles in all of July. That's down from nearly 200 per month the year before. He described the atmosphere as terminal. His floor plan costs alone now exceed $40,000 per month, and he's taken to offering what he calls emotional incentives, like buy one get one half off family packages to appeal to the few customers who still come in. But even with record-breaking markdowns, many buyers aren't biting. The damage has already been done. High interest rates, job insecurity, and inflation have shredded consumer confidence. For those who are still shopping, the focus has shifted from flash to function. And that shift has birthed an entirely new breed of dealer. Still, not every dealer is playing the discount game. Some are rewriting the rules entirely. Old cars? New rules? Survivor dealerships are abandoning new car sales and flipping to high-mileage used vehicles. In a complete reversal of industry tradition, some of the most successful dealerships in 2025 aren't selling brand new cars at all. Instead, they're thriving on what used to be considered the junk end of the market. High-mileage, pre-owned vehicles. Trucks with over 100,000 miles are now in high demand. Not because they're cheap, but because they've proven their reliability. A former Toyota dealer in Kentucky now runs a used car lot focused on practicality. Her top sellers? 10-year-old trucks and older sedans. She claims $5,000 cash cars bring more profit than new models ever did with thin dealer margins. The strategy is working because the psychology of the market has changed. Buyers no longer associate older cars with failure. In this economy, driving a paid-off beater isn't a symbol of poverty. It's a badge of intelligence. Customers are asking for vehicles with fewer electronics, simpler repair histories, and fewer software-driven headaches. They don't want subscriptions. They want certainty. And as vehicles age and buyers hold back, a new business model is quietly rising from the wreckage. From showrooms to service bays, dealerships are turning into repair shops and making more money fixing cars than selling them. When the flood of new car sales dried up, some dealers did something radical. They stopped trying to sell altogether. Instead, they opened their service doors wide. Across the country, franchise facilities that once showcased glossy SUVs and gleaming sedans have been converted into repair shops specializing in older vehicles. A facility outside Denver now operates under a new banner. No sales, just service. The owner says he makes more in 1 week repairing engines, swapping brakes, and updating suspensions than he did in a month of struggling to sell inventory. His customer base is growing fast. Why? Because Americans are holding on to their vehicles longer than ever before. With the average car age now exceeding 12 years, the service economy has become the hidden lifeline of the automotive industry. Customers are showing up with vehicles they've owned for a decade or more. They're not looking for upgrades. They're looking for life extension. And in this era of uncertainty, keeping the car you know feels safer than risking debt on one you don't. Yet even in this scramble to adapt, one paradox still haunts the market. Prices are stuck, and options are shrinking. The used car paradox. Used car inventory is tight, but prices won't give in. At first glance, it doesn't make sense. If demand has collapsed, why are used car prices still high? The answer lies in a chain reaction that began during the pandemic and never recovered. For 2 years, automakers slashed production. Fewer new vehicles meant fewer trade-ins. Lease returns dried up. Rental fleets never replenished. That bottleneck has now created a long-term shortage of reliable used vehicles. As of August, the average price for a 3-year-old used vehicle remains above $29,000. That's only a few thousand less than many new models, making affordability a cruel illusion. The supply of used vehicles under $15,000 has evaporated, leaving only older, high-mileage cars as viable options for the majority of budget-conscious consumers. Dealers are feeling the squeeze. They're competing at wholesale auctions, paying premiums on aging inventory, then fighting to resell them to customers who can barely afford basic financing. It's a paradox. Even as demand drops, prices remain stubborn, held up by structural scarcity. For the average American, this means fewer choices and more financial pressure. And for dealers, it's a trap. They can't profit from overpriced inventory, and they can't restock with anything cheaper. But the true fallout is not in dollars and cents. It's in the towns where all of this used to happen. Towns now being hollowed out, one closure at a time. The credit lockdown, other companies, from parts suppliers to lenders, are now getting squeezed in the crash's wake. The collapse of the car market didn't stop at the dealership door. It's rippling outward into every industry connected to automotive sales. And one of the hardest hit sectors is auto lending. As of August, rejection rates for new auto loan applications have reached over 33%. The highest since the Federal Reserve began tracking the data. That means 1 in every 3 borrowers is being turned away, regardless of income, credit score, or history. Why? Because lenders are terrified. Subprime delinquencies have already passed 15-year highs. Repossession rates are soaring, and banks are watching their auto loan portfolios hemorrhage value. Credit unions, once the safe haven for borrowers turned down by larger institutions, are now slamming the brakes on approvals. Even well-qualified applicants are finding it harder to get financing without massive down payments or double-digit interest rates. Meanwhile, parts suppliers, especially those serving new vehicle production, are seeing orders dry up. With manufacturers slowing factory output to avoid more excess inventory, the entire supply chain is grinding down. Tier 1 suppliers are announcing layoffs. Transport logistics firms are reporting massive unused capacity. From Detroit to Alabama to Mexico, the companies that built their business around the steady churn of American auto demand are facing an economy where that churn no longer exists. As the private sector scrambles to contain the fallout, the pressure is spilling straight into the halls of government. Political heat. State and federal officials are now under pressure. Communities demand bailouts or relief. Town mayors, state governors, and national legislators are being flooded with calls, emails, and protests from constituents whose livelihoods have vanished with the dealership closures. Families are losing jobs, local tax revenues are collapsing, school funding is being cut, and the auto industry, once hailed as a symbol of American strength, is suddenly at the center of an election-year firestorm. In response, some lawmakers are proposing emergency stabilization packages for small-town economies reliant on car sales. Others are demanding an investigation into the manufacturers that terminated franchise agreements with little notice. Labor unions are pushing for federal protection for auto service workers, especially those laid off after decades of employment. Even conservative lawmakers, often skeptical of intervention, are beginning to talk about preserving critical local infrastructure in rural communities. President Trump, already facing scrutiny for the effects of his 25% auto tariff, has doubled down. He claims the tariffs will lead to long-term manufacturing strength, despite the short-term pain. His critics, however, are pointing to dealership closures, job losses, and collapsing credit as direct evidence of failed policy. The political battle lines are now drawn, with middle America caught in the middle. While politicians trade blame and promises, Wall Street is delivering a far colder verdict. Wall Street's verdict: Wall Street is marking down automaker stocks and betting on a prolonged downturn. For months, investment analysts tried to ignore the signs, but now, the truth is too loud to deny. Automaker stock valuations have plummeted across the board. General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, and even Toyota have seen their market caps drop by double digits since the beginning of the summer. Investor calls are now dominated by questions about inventory strategy, loan exposure, and future demand modeling, and the answers are not reassuring. Analysts are projecting that the rest of the year will see vehicle sales pace at just over 15 million units annually, a massive drop from the early spring surge. At the same time, the average transaction price continues to hover near $50,000, keeping affordability out of reach for most working Americans. This toxic combination, collapsing volume and rising cost, is precisely what Wall Street fears most. Private equity firms are already moving to acquire distressed dealer property. Hedge funds are shorting automotive lenders. Even automakers that once seemed insulated, like Tesla, are seeing their aggressive growth projections quietly revised downward. For the financial world, this isn't just a tough quarter, it's a revaluation of the auto industry as a whole. But amid the downgrades and forecasts, a different story is unfolding in garages, driveways, and backyards across the country. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just about cars, it's about survival. So hit subscribe, because what's coming next isn't being covered in the headlines, but we'll be breaking it down in real time. Stay sharp, stay informed, and be the one who saw it before it hit home. The new American driver. This crash may have just started, but smart buyers and tight communities can still come out ahead. Amid all the chaos, a quiet revolution is happening on driveways across the country. Americans are changing how they think about cars. Flashy upgrades and luxury models are no longer the goal. Financial survival is. More buyers are choosing to purchase outright with cash, buying older, simpler, more reliable vehicles that require fewer repairs and offer lower insurance premiums. In small towns, neighbors are banding together to share repair tools, swap used parts, and keep their vehicles running longer. Online marketplaces for second-hand parts and community-led repair forums are exploding in popularity. Independent mechanics are booked out for weeks. And small businesses that support this new economy, auto recyclers, tire shops, local garages, are thriving where big dealerships have failed. The age of the $600 monthly payment is ending. In its place is a new culture of frugality, mechanical literacy, and local resilience. It's not just a financial pivot, it's a psychological one. Consumers are rejecting the myth that a newer car is always a better one. Instead, they're embracing vehicles that are owned, maintained, and understood, machines that serve them, not the other way around. This transition won't save every town. It won't bring back every job. But it might just spark a broader movement, one that challenges the industry to rebuild from the ground up. Because in the end, the collapse of the car market didn't destroy American drivers. It woke them up. The collapse isn't coming. It's already here. If this opened your eyes, don't scroll past it. Subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs to understand what's really happening, and stay alert. You've seen the signs, you know the stakes, and the next move could be the one that matters most.